Hey gamers, this is Patrick and Jason. Welcome to RPGaymer, Episode 1, a podcast about LGBT and inclusion in video games.
So before we start this episode, we wanted to take some time to introduce ourselves to you all. My name is Jason. I actually met Patrick when we were in college. We went to the same university. We actually met in the same residence hall where we worked together. That was my second year of school there. No, my third year of school there. And then we worked together for about 2.5 more years up until graduation. We kind of became friends quickly. You vetted me on Facebook and saw that I liked certain video games and you were excited to meet me. So that was kind of funny because I had no idea who you were. I'm like, okay, whatever. Currently, I am actually in California. Moved out here with my girlfriend and now my wife, actually. And we are living out here, enjoying our best life. I got into games at a really early age. I feel like my first console was really my NES. I remember playing Bubble Bobble, one of my first games. I remember really liking Mega Man 3 because we rented it when you remember renting games was a thing. I always really enjoyed playing fighting games, and that came from two older brothers that also played fighting games. So lots of Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, Tekken. And then I really fell in love with playing role-playing games on the PlayStation, most likely. Looking at the first games that we rented, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy. I remember renting Final Fantasy 9. And ever since then, and some prior games before that, I just always really liked role-playing games.
My name's Patrick. As Jason mentioned, I met him in college at Purdue University. Pop quiz for Jason to put him on the spot. Do you remember how I came out to you?
How you came out to me? I don't remember the exact situation that happened, but I'm pretty sure your phrase was, I like dudes.
Yes, it was, so I dig dudes. Is that okay? Is how I came out to Jason. And I already knew that it was going to be a, yes, it's okay. I'd come from a smaller town, so it was really hard to trust in some ways with some people that when you come out to them that they were going to be your ride or die. I had a good feeling that Jason was going to be that person, and you were the person when I say is my best friend. You are that guy. But I knew very early that we had the potential for a great friendship. So that was just how I phrased it. After I graduated, I taught English for 10 years. And I live in Indiana, and I'm married to my husband, Scott, and we've been married for 3 years. Oh, gaming, man. My claim to fame in gaming is that I originally started playing Final Fantasy 1990, and it is what taught me how to read. And I know that there isn't a lot of text in the game for the people that actually know the game, but it definitely was one of those things where my parents were not sure, if I was going to develop as an early reader or not. But at the time, that was a pretty, for a console game, text-heavy game. And there were a lot of things that you can't figure out where to go unless you're reading it. So that was really, the first Final Fantasy definitely gets credit for teaching me how to read. I grew up with a Nintendo and a Sega. I'd say my obsession kind of developed from there. Definitely, even at a young age, I like games that made me think. So I would say RPGs are definitely my favorite genre, but I wouldn't say that that's how I would define myself as a gamer, because I like games. I think most gamers are people who diversify, but not everybody. But I like action games, adventure, puzzle, fighting games, because of you, Jason. And then I've always been a huge fan of survival horrors. One of my biggest achievements as a kid was I beat Resident Evil 3 before my brother did. I had never touched a Resident Evil game before. He was always the one who played them, and I would just be kind of in the background hiding behind a pillow because at the time they were super terrifying. I just decided, when we got it, I was going to pick it up, and I beat it before him, and I was so proud of myself. So I would say I'm 50-50 on classic games and new games. All right, so for today's topic, starting with a little bit of a heavier one than what we have planned for the future. But Jason, if I had to ask you to name 5 LGBTQ characters or LGBTQ plus characters off the top of your head before we decide to make this the topic of our first episode, could you do that?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I feel like I probably could, but would they be non-stereotypical or joke characters, probably not. It would be quite difficult.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That when I thought about starting this channel, I thought about what I would want to discuss in this channel. I reached out to a lot of YouTubers, and they definitely said, like, find your voice and find your trend. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is just like representation for the LGBT community, just because I don't feel like we're represented well at all. And I talked to a lot of people about this, about like, hey, you're a gamer. Can you name a gay character before 2015, before like 2010? And a lot of people could name maybe like one, and they said the same thing as you. They couldn't. Now, Jason is like the most ally of allies. So one thing that we actually talked about, for some people, if you're just an ally, and I want to say just an ally, like that's a terrible thing. And I'm going to let you speak to this, Jason. It's not necessarily something that's the forefront of your mind where you think of that representation. For me, it is, because, you know, you grow up and you want to find people that reflect you in the media that you consume. So do you have any thoughts on that, Jason?
Yeah, definitely. You're right. Like, I don't have the same background as you or many other people, so my representation in games is much different. But hearing you say it just now makes me think of just playing games growing up, and like I would easily imagine like I am Link in Ocarina of Time, like I am him, and so I feel like that's the purpose of many games, especially RPGs. Like, you become that character, but when there's like a core value that doesn't align to you, like that's hard. That's even hard for me to imagine, because like, as you know, a straight white male, like that hasn't really been the case in many games. It's usually, in terms of sexuality, it's easy to find that reflection in a character you're playing. And I can speak to when, you know, there's things that aren't me in a game, like, let's be, I don't know, super random and say like, you know, someone is left-handed and I'm right-handed, then it's just kind of like, oh, that's weird, but you just sort of adapt to it, like that's what you're playing right now. But when it's something much deeper, you know, it's more difficult to relate to that person, and it's got to be challenging to have that difficult relationship be, let's be super frank, many, if not almost all, representation of every characters in every game since the beginning.
For me, growing up, I don't really think I thought about it until I saw what I wasn't in a game. And that's kind of like the stereotypes that tend to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
The first game I think that really came to mind, at least like from what I can remember now, because it was a long time ago, was the Shadowheart series, which was like a small PlayStation 2 RPG, which any of these games, just so our listeners know that we're going to be talking about, are still going to be really great games. And, you know, times have changed, but not completely. And we'll get to that. So the Shadowheart series, basically the first time that I saw characters that were like just LGBT or gay were an extreme stereotype. And it was very shocking to me because of how over-sexualized it was too. So, for example, in order to basically upgrade one of your characters and their weapons, you needed to get these playing cards, which was a really cool concept. But on these playing cards were just like mostly naked men. And you would turn these cards into this guy in order to get your upgrades. And he was always like just the epitome of what media thinks it is to be gay. And I really feel like it just sets a bad standard for people, because it just becomes a comic relief or a joke. And I mean, even as a teenager, I never really felt like my sexual identity was a joke. So it was hard to feel like I was represented in those games. Were there any games that you played where you kind of noticed like, oh, I don't really know about how that character is being represented right now?
Yeah, yes, I think that it was probably later on in just gaming in general, really, when, you know, me as Jason kind of developed and became a better understanding person of different perspectives and personalities. I feel like the first time I really thought about it was very recently with Dragon Quest XI, because I think there's a character in there that we'll discuss later too that it just felt like I'm pretty sure he's gay, and like my mind was thinking, is this the right way to portray him? Like, is there a better way this could be going? But it was for sure the first time I could think of, probably really ever, because maybe in my younger mind didn't really grasp the concept. But the first time I could think of where I was thinking about that choice of like reason, like why make the choice? What's the purpose for this character to be possibly homosexual? And yeah, so I think even for me, as someone who I always felt was pretty open to everything, there's still so many times to learn and question and wonder what could be and how things can be represented fairly.
Sure. And I'm happy that you said like represented fairly, because one of the things that I kind of noticed growing up, and even in my research just for this topic, I don't think I could find a single gay male main character in terms of just like LGBT main characters. Ellie in The Last of Us, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with her or not. She is a lesbian, which I think is super awesome that they did. Like, that was something that they included, and it's nice to have the representation. But in order to get any of that, you have to play a side story or the DLC. You don't get any of that throughout the main story. Did you get to like play that DLC at all, or did you get to play The Last of Us?
I did not play The Last of Us, but Laura did play it, so I was able to watch her play through it. But we didn't get to any DLC yet, and I think it was just in the DLC that kind of happened, or that storyline progressed, and then in the sequel it was further extended. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean, like, what happens is just such a beautiful moment when, I mean, sorry for spoilers for people. I mean, we're going to be talking about older games, so spoilers are probably going to come up. But spoiler alert in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When they have their kiss, it's so sweet, and it's like, it's just really pure and innocent. It's just the fact that like it wasn't something that they felt like they could include in the main game. Again, it's hard because you have these companies that are trying out these things. They're trying to push the bill, they're trying new things, but like those of us who have been, like gaming for a long time, since the 80s, early 90s, or even just like maybe you're a new gamer and you've just noticed it. It just kind of sucks when it's like, but why not earlier? Why not in the main series? Why, like, why can't we see more of that?
Totally agree with you. And it's not like lesbians, gays didn't exist those times. Like, they were just there. And I think it's easy for mainstream media, current anyone to look at, well, like, look what we're doing now. Like, this is so great. And yeah, I suppose comparatively it's much better, but there's still ways to go. And it's just a general understanding of why. Like, why was it that way? Why is it still this way? Why do we have to discuss it and clarify this person's like character and just make it like seem appropriate when it should be organic? Like, if games are going to represent life, sometimes they're fantastic and all this stuff. But if they're going to do that, then why does it need to be a forced thing? But let's respect that people are what they are, and we can represent them accordingly. Like, someone shouldn't have to play a game and feel like I'm ostracized from this character because of this core value that for some reason is never represented, or is represented in a way that is not congruent with how it's actually represented in today's society.
I'm happy you use the word organic too. I think that's a really important word, because I feel like when you're talking about things like the stereotype, there are times when like the stereotype is true and like it fits people, and it's no insult to people that are just like organically like that. But I feel like it's those forced situations where it's a joke is when it's insulting, and not even like it's a joke at the character's expense. Not that it's a joke that everyone is going to get to laugh at, but it's literally just a joke at the character's expense. An example that I can think of, most villains that are gay are hugely overly flamboyant, almost like insultingly, to the point where like that is what their key characteristic is to make the main characters uncomfortable. And I feel like there's often a scene where characters are just like super cringed out because of what the villain is doing. So it's not even like the villain is cool in any way. It's just that they're doing something that is homoerotic that is making people uncomfortable.
I agree with you. I feel like this just happened in, I don't know, for my experience, like 90s games, like where characters were like their defining characteristic was like that thing you just said. Like they are homosexual, they are lesbian, they are gay, or they cross dress or something that's like, oh, that's taboo, but is it really? Like it's not like that intrinsically is a bad thing. It's just what someone chose. Like
right, because I mean, like we love drag queens first and foremost, and would love to see a drag queen RPG 100%. But like
I would play the shit out of that
yeah,
game.
we want those characters to be awesome and incredible, you know, and fantastic, not just, you know, they're a cross-dressing weak character with no substance. Are you thinking like Resident Evil Code Veronica?
Yeah, that's a good one actually. But I guess what I was really thinking out was like if you played like a beat 'em up or something, there would be characters that were dressed provocatively as like women that could be like, you know, lesbians, I suppose. There could be men that are dressed up in these like odd clothing and like that's their characteristic. It's, hey, this guy is potentially gay and he's wearing pink. Like, this is so crazy, when that's a really bad way to represent anyone, let alone someone that is gay or might cross dress or is a drag queen, any of those things. Like the negative connotation with them is, well, negative. It's bad.
Right.
And I think that comparatively to today's standards, you can see it more. Which, to get back to my example with Dragon Quest XI and Sylvando, like I think I'm more open to seeing it. But back then, even still, it's not great. That characteristic or that person, that lifestyle is already villainized, and they're not even a villain, and that's awful.
Another example, and this is actually something that I think is in a way great. I have noticed that female lesbian characters have increased like exponentially since the 2000s. We see so many characters that identify as lesbian, and we're not by any way knocking lesbians, even though I know lesbians and gays have been at war since like the late 80s. But what I have noticed is that most of these characters, these females, it's just fan service for like straight men. And oh man, I mean, this is something that you could probably speak on, Jason, more than I can, because hey, nobody got time for that in my household. How do you feel when you see, especially because you think about things, you're not someone just like, oh yeah, baby. How do you feel when you see that kind of like forced sexuality when it serves a different purpose?
Yeah, it's kind of dumb just because like it's not representative of anything real life. I can only give my own perspective because like I am me. So I like to think that I am like the average Jason because this is what I feel. So seeing like these behind butt shots of like women for no reason, like it's not artistically fun or anything like that. It's just strange. That's really odd. And then to push it further towards like lesbian interaction, even anything gay too, that's just there to like shock. It just seems kind of silly. It's not representative of what it's really like. I mean, I don't ever think anyone goes anywhere and is like, oh my god, lesbians, and they like attack the person by kissing each other. Like it's so silly and weird. So I don't know why this idea happens that we can put that image out in people's minds that that's what happens, because it's just negative. I feel like it's just appealing to this male fantasy of seeing women kiss each other, and that's not cool. I just don't think it's right at all.
I know obviously that sexuality is about sex, but it's not just about sex. Believe it or not, my husband and I do more than just have sex. You know, like we are fully well-rounded people. And when we see these characters, we want to see how well-rounded they are too. You know, I don't just want to see like what intimate scenes they get to have with each other, because it just makes it really flat or one note. You know, at that point, just fan service.
Yeah, I actually love that you said that too. I think that just being gay, it's not the only thing that you do. It's not, we have gay sex, that's all we do. It's just that part of you is, when it comes to sexuality, I like other men. And that's the only thing that being gay like means to some people, and when they take that to the extreme, it creates those negative stereotypes.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just like I personally don't feel comfortable like necessarily writing a gay character or something, because I don't have that experience that you would have, Patrick. So if I were to do something like that, absolutely consult someone that's an expert there. Like, I mean, you mentioned earlier doing research for this article. Like, it would be the same thing in my mind. If you're going to write anything or do something and you don't know or you don't have the experience, researching it probably makes sense, so you can get the true feeling of that person or that character that you want to have. And then I think you will actually start to see better representation in this case, games, but just all over the board.
Speaking of better representation, because we hit so many things that are just like a straight up no, how are we starting to see some of these more recent trends in games? Like, how are we seeing things get better? Because I don't know about you, and we've talked about this a little bit, but like, I am starting to notice in a lot more games being able to identify a little bit better with what's going on, or being able to put myself in a position where I can play a character that is gay. What kinds of trends are you noticing with that?
Do you mean more so like trends of player creation where you can like make yourself, or just like representation in the main character aspect?
I'm thinking like when you can put yourself in the character's perspective. I mean, like if I had to speak to that, what I've noticed, and maybe not even just when you can create your own character, but like maybe just main characters in general for all games. I feel like there's a big contrast between a true gay character and a potentially gay character. And the way I kind of see that running down is basically true gay characters are characters that, like, in the context of the plot, they're gay. You know, like no matter what happens, it's just very, very clear. Potentially gay characters to me are the ones where I think of games that are like your sandbox games or your farming sims or your sims in general, where you have the option to see them, date them, but the choices, the conversations are pretty much one-to-one if you were playing as a female character. And that always is a little insulting to me because, like, not a girl. Things are different when it is two guys. Things are different when it's two girls. It's just upsetting. I know you play a lot of sandbox games or in Sims. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I would describe it as the illusion of choice, where it seems like you have a choice, but it's really just a triangle that points down to the very end. And when you get there, it doesn't really matter what you did. You just got to the end. So there's not a lot of differences there. And I mean, there's probably subtle things where a character can be romanced in a game like Mass Effect that are different for a male shepherd and a female shepherd main character. But if it doesn't matter because that person isn't there, then it's not super great. I think it's better than nothing at all, but it does seem a little strange. Yeah, it just does seem a little strange that I can talk to this person who says largely the same thing. I mean, you could try to spin it like, hey, you're creating the world as you go, and in your version of the world, I don't know, Liara is lesbian. So like, cool. But I feel like in terms of the game, if you meta this discussion, she was not written that way. Like, she was written, it's almost like they're written to be sexless because you do anything. And so it kind of takes away what makes, you know, why you should be proud to be a gay person. Like, it kind of ruins it because there's nothing there to just be a flat character for the player character to interact with. They don't really become what you were saying, Patrick, as a true gay character because they're really like nothing. They're kind of pawns for the player to play around with.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. It's kind of on the fence. It's nice that you can see it, but it doesn't really have the same impact because you don't have that intimacy. There are some really great sandbox games. The Dragon Age series is the first one that comes to my mind, where you have some characters that are exclusively lesbian, you have exclusive gay characters, and then you have some characters that are bisexual, but it totally fits their personality. So it really works for the game. It's not like, well, this character is probably the marketing wise is the one that both genders would probably want to go, both sexes want to go to. No, it's definitely like it fits the character type, and that's why it works pretty well. So I definitely say kudos to the Dragon Age series because I always felt things were a little bit more authentic in that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, that's what I would rather see. Like I'm not sure if you do this for games, but I will oftentimes look up in advance or like read through articles or instruction manuals, whatever, about like background history and things like that. And when I see like options for romances in like Stardew Valley, Harvest Moons, whatever.
Stardew Valley.
And I know, right? And like you can see like, oh, this character is actually only attainable if you do these things. Like it makes them a little bit more fun to like pursue because they could be their true character. And like you get a story by finding out what you as a player need to do to get them. And it creates the world story of the player. Because like you as a player in any video game are like creating your narrative. It's your story. You as in the player enjoy what the character in the game does. So when you can find a character that is truly only homosexual and you're playing a female like protagonist, then in that story, it gives that homosexual person, the NPC, a way to interact with you that is organic and true to what they would do normally. And it makes it feel it just makes it feel like it's a better written game because it like literally is, but it just is more fun to play because then I have someone that supports me as like a straight character because that's how I'm going to play a character. And it also supports you, Patrick, as someone probably playing a character that might be gay because now you have this person who represents you on the side that you could maybe get with or do whatever you feel like if you wanted to pursue something more romantic. And that's where I feel like games are heading in a sense. And it's pretty cool.
I'm happy you brought up Stardew Valley because I stand that game so hard. And I have mad respect for the creator of that game and all the things that he tried to do because he pretty much did it all by himself. And I am madly in love with Alex from that game. And it's every time I played it, because I've replayed it like 4 times. And I think 3 of the 4 times I've married Alex. It's so hard at the same time when you are wooing him because the scenes that you get, those like scenes where you get to know his character, I've only noticed maybe from, I don't know if things have changed, but from maybe like even through like the 3rd update of the game, you get about 1 line that's different if it's a same-sex relationship. It's just like I didn't realize this about myself, something along those lines. It's not really anything deep. So just kind of like what you were saying there, really just it's awesome that we're seeing this more, but we need more.
I feel like we're getting there because you already brought up Ellie and Last of Us. I feel like they're starting to get more mainstream representation for anything other than straight people, and I think that's wonderful. Looking at some of the examples that I was bringing to the table, I feel like a lot more recently I've noticed those things. So we already talked about Dragon Quest XI and Sylvando.
Yeah, we need to talk about Sylvando because Sylvando for me is like perfection in doing that. Like, oh, you want to make fun of gay people? Well, we're gonna make him gay as fuck. But he's also super cool and super deep. And that's why, like, I love him. Like, I feel like he was written to be the stereotype intentionally, but we're going to build him up in such a way that, like, everyone's going to love him anyways. And because it just comes across as authentic. They do dance around the whole notion of, like we're going to make you think his dad's going to disown him because of his sexual identity. And it has nothing to do with that, which I think is a really nice thing too. Cause it's like the dad doesn't even care. I just like, he is one of my favorite characters in the past 5 years. Like I had great joy seeing him. Wow, when he came on, his lines, his dialogue, his flirtatious nature, and just the fact that he was just like a fully functional, strong, usable character in a game, like super love him. And Dragon Quest XI is one of the best games that ever came out. So
yeah, it's pretty solid. I felt like with Sylvando, I remember thinking like, is this okay? Like, is he being shown? Is he too flamboyant? Like, I wasn't sure. So when I was playing, I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. But like, I think it was because, like you mentioned with his father, you don't know that until later. But then it's never really it's never presented in a way that's like he's gay for the sake of having a gay character.
I feel like sometimes we see characters that aren't necessarily have their sexual identity addressed in games because maybe game developers are really afraid to push away a crowd and an interest. But I still feel like he's just so strong and it's so blatant. It's okay, you know? Also, too, I mean, like, he travels the world with Dave, which is a thick boy. So, you know, like, you really get that whole notion of, like, this is the vibe that's going on. They may not officially say it, but it's there.
Okay, we have to talk about this because I just thought his name was Dave.
Yeah, it's, if you listen to the cutscenes, they say Sylvando says Dave, which I think it is Dave though, because Sylvando says a lot of things. I'm assuming it might be Italian, but it also might be like Spanish. So I don't really know. But yeah,
got it. Well, I was like Sylvando and Dave. They're where it's at. They got a sweet ship. Okay, awesome. I wanted to sort of wrap up this piece here, just thinking about the representation that we have and where we have gotten to nowadays with a lot of great examples. So we just brought up Sylvando as a supporting cast character that is truly gay. Something else that I've noticed too from a game that I super loved was Hades from last year. So you play as the son of Hades and his name is Zagreus and his sexuality is, I would assume, identified as bisexual because just sex in that game is so nonchalant. It just sort of is what it is. Everything feels very natural. There's moments where you will be talking to women, you'll be talking to men, and it's just conversations between two people. And it feels so natural and cool, and it's just neat. The way that game is narrated, it's a little bit different. You're clearly playing a character, but you're not like making every choice. There's things that happen before the game even starts. So developing those relationships further and understanding them, it's really cool. And it just makes you think like it doesn't matter how that sexuality between the two is. It's just neat to have this experience. And it feels so cool to be like, this character's bisexual and I love him. It's just such a cool way to play the game.
I've yet to play it, but from what you've told me, like in just what we've discussed, what I like hearing about that is this is something that the creators thought about ahead of time and thought to include. And it's just a matter of fact. It's like, yes, you don't have to develop those relationships, but it's a big chunk of the game, right?
Totally. And you hit it on the head. Like, you don't have to develop them, but like you literally can. And it's so natural the way that it happens. If you want to pursue or give favors, which is like you give them ambrosia and stuff like that in the game. And as you do more of them, like you develop a stronger relationship bond and like you can do it with whomever you want, like really. And one of the characters, Thanatos, like the god of death, like he and Zag are childhood friends, and you realize through their stories as they go that they might be a little bit more than childhood friends. And it's kind of cool. And at the same time, you can kind of also be getting your relationship built with some of the other female characters too, and you can see like their relationship, like, yo, these two hate each other, but like these two definitely get along, even though it's like a love-hate, and you feel a lot of it. And the way that everyone just talks, it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like anything is there to be there to check off a box. It just feels like these are two characters organically living in their world.
I think that's just a perfect example of how things are starting to get better, and we're just starting to see more of this development and just like almost like less of a choice. It's just something that people need to accept. Like, I hate to use the phrase "we're here, we're queer," but I mean, like, it is true. Like, people just really need to adjust to that.
Do you have any other examples that you really think stick out to you as really great examples of representation and queerness?
I do want to point out that, like, I'm really sorry for everyone who identifies, as non-binary or trans. Like, super, I have all the love for everyone in the spectrum. I think just most naturally for me, just being a gay male, it like that is for me is like what I'm passionate about. But like, please note, we have something coming on our second segment that's going to try and be a little bit more inclusive in general for the full spectrum. For me, the strongest developed character that I've seen that let me know like things were starting to get better is Kanji for Persona 4. Kanji's character will always be near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of debate about what the character goes through, but basically what he's struggling with internally and how it manifests with him on the outside. He is a very hard, your classic punk character, but you actually get to travel like inside this character's ego, and on the inside he has this whole like world that he's created, which is a sauna, and in this sauna he's always in a towel. His voice is very different, it's very flamboyant, and the bosses that you fight in his world are like very, very hunky men, and it goes with the whole thing where like, yes, it's blown out of proportion, but it's blown out of proportion in a way that shows how the character is dealing with his own sexuality and the things that he's picked up on the outside of the world, as opposed to making people feel embarrassed for being gay. He's embarrassed and he's struggling with it, and he comes to accept not being gay, he's bisexual. It really is that whole notion like he does not know and he's trying to figure it out. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the way the character is developed, because showing what's on the inside of like what people go through when they're coming out is not, we don't really get to see the inside part. We get to see the outside part. We get to see how people are bullied, get to see things like first kisses and dates and how parents respond, but you don't get to see that internal struggle. So Kanji, for me, just like seeing what's going on and his friends being supportive of him and not making it a joke. I know the main character can have some scenes where it's a little iffy and his sidekick is a little bit of a douchebag about it, but for the most part, I feel like it's done in a positive way.
Patrick and I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic too. Head on over to HeyRPGaymer on Instagram and Twitter and let us know what you think. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
All right, we are back. Wanted to change up pace for just a little bit here. What have you been playing recently? Anything fun? Anything new, exciting?
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about this because every time that we record a podcast, we are going to talk about what games we're playing. And I'm always shuffling like 3 games around at the same time for each system that I have. So I fortunately have a PS5, I have a Switch, and I still play my 3DS. So I'm playing 3 games right now. I am finishing up Fire Emblem Conquest on the 3DS on hard mode, which is very frustrating. Yeah.
Good luck.
It's a struggle. I'm watching one of my favorite YouTubers, Booty Bopper, who's Professor Bopper now, actually. He just kind of changed his name recently, obviously based on his PhD, a master's in Bop. So he's been inspiring me to kind of get back into Fire Emblem and Tactics games, which I'm happy because I like games that are challenging. How about you? What are you playing?
So I'm actually very, very close to the end of Immortals Phoenix Rising on the PS4. Pretty sure I'm jumping into the last section and then should be able to beat it relatively soon. Is that the game
that's like the Greek Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, basically. It's funny you say that. I'm actually doing a piece right now for my blog about that specific comparison and how I get that it's a thing, but I don't think it's really justifiable, like to be in a negative context. But yes, that is what you're talking about. And
super flattering.
Yeah, it's good. I think if you like Breath of the Wild, you'll like this game. Also, fun fact: the day we're recording this is actually the 4-year anniversary of Breath of the Wild on the Switch. Gasp.
Okay, guys, welcome back. So we know that the first segment was really heavy, maybe a little bitchy, but still very raw and honest. So we wanted to balance out the rest of our podcast in the second segment with something a little bit more fun. So Jason and I thought it'd be really cool. He told me about this idea he did on another podcast where he drafted characters. And I'm like, oh, I love that. I love the idea of drafting characters. And why don't we, since we're talking about characters that hit with the whole LGBTQ plus spectrum, why don't we do a draft of those characters that we found that are characters that people would recognize? One thing I wanted to note, though, was when we decided what we were drafting them for, because I like a topic, you don't want to just draft characters for no reason. I wanted to make sure it was something that really built up these characters and bolstered their strengths and gave them that positivity, kind of what we were talking about with Sylvando earlier, where they have a prerogative, they have importance. So we're drafting our all-star team to save the world. As we go through, we're going to go ahead and just kind of give a little spiel on stealing that character to just give reasons why, make it exciting, make it fun. So I apparently cheated because we asked my husband to pick a number to see who was going to get to draw first, and I won. So I'll go ahead and get things started. We should probably say who the characters are that we're drafting, shouldn't we?
Oh, yeah. That's good. Why don't you start with that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and run through them. We listed 17 characters. Don't ask me why it's an odd number. That's just how it worked out to draft. And this is where I wanted to make sure that we, in our discussion, included as many different pieces of the spectrum as possible. We have gay characters, we have non-binary characters, we have bisexual characters, just to try and make sure that we're representing a little bit more evenly. It was a little bit easier to do this because, again, it would be hard for us to speak on what it is like for different parts of the spectrum, but it's not hard for us to talk about how awesome characters in the spectrum are.
Yeah, and it lends itself well to the topic of saving the world, because I can talk all day about how X, Y, and Z are amazing people.
Right. So our characters that we chose, we have Tiny Tina from Borderlands 2. We have Dorian Pavis from Dragon Age Inquisition. Veronica from Fallout New Vegas. Arcade from Fallout New Vegas. Quina from Final Fantasy IX. Poison from Street Fighter and Final Fight. Ellie from The Last of Us. Vivian from Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door, Kanji from Persona 4, Major Rykov from Metal Gear Solid 3, Juhani from Knights of the Old Republic, Flea from Chrono Trigger, Sander Cohen from BioShock, Undyne from Undertale, Sylvando from Dragon Quest XI, Tweak and Craig, which count as one character, from South Park Fractured But Whole. Yeah, I love saying that. And Zagreus from Hades? Yes, okay. I'm going to go first. So the rule kind of is choose your character. The other person doesn't get to choose them. We have to cross them off their list. And they're going to say how they identify on the spectrum. This is per Wikipedia, which I know is not a reliable source, but it is one of the only sources that we could find that had a substantial list of characters. And I feel like it's pretty reliable. So my first pick, because we've talked about him so much, I was torn, was Sylvando. So Sylvando is my first. He is just so awesome. I just really, really, really like how they created this character. I like characters that play supporting roles, which he does really well on his cast. He's one of the better healers earlier on the game. And then he really just adds to the humor of the overall game. He has some of the funnier moments, and he really saves the day, sometimes too miraculously. And he has a boat. So that's why I chose him. What are your thoughts?
I felt like he was such a fun character, super strong. Literally in the game, he was a really good character to play as. So he's pretty essential to the team. And he's got a boat.
All right, your pick now.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure you're not going to pick this one, but I needed to select it because I love them. But my first pick has to be Quina from Final Fantasy IX. I just love her so much. I feel like they were so funny because they just did not care about anything else. They just wanted to eat food. And they had that blue magic, and I loved it. Personally, FF9 was one of my first Final Fantasies, so there's also that too. But I just thought they were such a fun character, and it was so cool to play as them. And the gameplay they brought was a little more varied, and I really like that. So I think they would be great on my team because they can adapt to many situations, and they probably cook really well, and I would eat that.
Yeah, I hope you like eating frogs.
I'll eat it.
So I like Quina as well. Blue magic is actually one of my favorite magic types in Final Fantasy, so very solid there. Might be one of the only non-binary characters that I can think of in any game aside from maybe like a Steven Universe game, but we were trying to exclude things that came from other sources aside from maybe like South Park. Our list kind of got struggled towards the end. But yeah, Queen is great. I think the only thing that put me off about Quina was the fact that the fork does random damage. Okay, my second pick, I know for Jason this is not going to be a surprise either, but I wanted to hit it hard and right away, and I'm happy I got both of them, was Kanji from Persona 4. Persona 4 probably came out in about 2008 or 2009. It was somewhere around then. I kind of knew who I was at that point. I had a pretty solid grasp on my identity, but it was really nice to see it reaffirmed in some characters and just the struggles that they went through. It made me think of like in high school, what it was like for me when I was like telling people things like, oh, I like girls, or no, I'm not gay, or oh, maybe I'm bi, you know, like just to kind of figure it out. So it was nice to have that relation, but also like he's just such a badass. He beats people up with a chair. I like his really rough exterior, but he's just really like, he's kind-hearted. He's really nice to this like kid who makes dolls just kind of like he does, and lightning magic is always super cool, so that's one of the other reasons why I chose him.
Nice. I unfortunately can't speak too much to him because I have still not played Persona 4.
So it might be the best one. Why are we friends?
I don't know. Well, you got Persona and I can have Overwatch.
Okay, all right, your pick.
Also, probably not surprising, but my top pick I was gonna pick because I love him, but I figured you might pick Quina first. So I gotta go with Zagreus from Hades. I think that he's just too badass. I think there's too much going on. He can offer so much because he can use so many weapons. He's such a smart and smooth talker. He's also really nice looking. So I feel like he's just pretty great in terms of having him on my team. And in the game, like we discussed earlier, his casualness with everything and the way that he is written to interact with other characters in a very natural and fluid way makes everything seem natural. I know I'm repeating the same words, but it just seemed like that's the way it should happen. And I appreciate that. I would want to see more from him specifically and his interactions, and I want to see more characters written like that.
I obviously, because I said I haven't played it yet, have nothing to speak to him, but I will say like you have piqued my interest in the game because of that. Like I definitely want to check it out now, and I know it's my type of game. It's just my backlog right now is huge, but like I think I might bump it up a little bit more because of that, because it definitely interests me.
What's your next one?
All right, my third pick, Juhani from Knights of the Old Republic, is a Jedi. So that was really cool. I think I read that something about her being patched in as a lesbian, or maybe it wasn't clear that she was. There was something about it that was really weird, but they got it fixed, so that way it was just very like clear, like, yes, this is a lesbian character. She talks about her lover. I thought that was really nice. Mm-hmm. You find her, I think, on the Wookiee planet. If you've ever played Knights of the Old Republic.
I'm pretty sure that's where it is, too. So it sounds familiar to me.
And I mean, female Jedi, I mean, at that point, I think she might be your third potential Jedi. So it's just nice to have someone who really rounds out the team. I mean, looking at the list of characters that we have, I feel like it would be a very poor choice to not go for the Jedi early, Jason.
Dude, she was literally my next pick.
Well,
so
I got her.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. This is how it goes. She's pretty great. And I agree with you. Like, I literally looked at this list as, like, who is going to save my butt if I'm on, a planet where I need to get saved.
So you chose Quina first.
Yeah, she's just too cool, though. I mean, if I'm looking at this list of characters, no one else is like them. So I think that's pretty cool. Fair. All right, well, with that in mind, and thinking of how I need to balance my team, my next choice is Arcade Gannon from Fallout New Vegas. Arcade is botanist, whatever they were in that game.
I think he's a medical scientist, right?
A doctor, like a scientist, like researching medicine. And I feel like that's going to be smart in a team to save the world. I need some sort of medical abilities. That game, compared to 3, did a little bit better job of showcasing character differences. And I feel like it was kind of at the forefront of probably why that game is better received nowadays than 3 and definitely 4. I felt like things just felt like they were in the right place. I felt like you were in a cohesive and constructed world. And characters like Arcade, who is gay, I don't know if I said that he was gay, they just feel like you're playing a character in a world that they belong in, and like this is the world that functions on its own. It doesn't feel like it's forced or anything, and I just like that. There's so many other characters in that game too that really stand out, but in terms of this specific list, I think Arcade's a great choice.
So 3 things. 1, Fallout New Vegas is Fallout Perfection.
Fallout New Perfection.
2, I completely agree with you about how New Vegas is just kind of like a world where I feel like Fallout 3 was an idea.
That's a good point.
And then number 3, Arcade is just really cool, like exclusive laser, which is pretty awesome. I think he was the first character in any game that I'd ever played where you got to choose to be gay. I feel like all the conversations were really flirtatious because New Vegas didn't really have true relationships, but it was the first time because if you chose was it the Sandman perk, or it was some kind of perk that you chose that made you interested in men.
Oh yeah.
So then you got special conversations that you could have with him.
Right.
And I mean, like, it was really exciting for me when I played that game to be like, oh yeah, I'm like going to talk to this character and we're going to talk about gay stuff. Like, he's my gay homie now.
Yeah, I just felt like it was like your example with Kanji. If I'm remembering right, I think Arcade had like persecution or something where like he tried to keep his gayness like on the down low so people didn't know because of fear of being persecuted. And 1, that's awful. But 2, I felt like, yeah, like I can see that in the real world, like being a bad thing that could happen to you. And so it felt like I want to help you. Like I want to be your ally in this game. So for sure.
All right, my next pick is the other character from Fallout New Vegas. I chose Veronica, who is a lesbian. I feel like she really shows that whole contrast of like wanting to be strong, but also having a soft side, because of like one of her quests is all about dresses. She's very smart, and she's voice acted by Felicia Day, which if you know who that is, Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Dr. Horrible Sing-Along Blog, like that was the instant choice for me, like Felicia Day, but all the other perks are good too.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I felt like with Arcade and Veronica, I was like, oh yeah, those 2 characters. And I remember making this list thinking about which one would I really want if I had to pick like one over the other. I didn't expect them to go like one after the other, I guess. But I think that she was pretty cool. And like I remember meeting her in that game. I'm pretty sure she's the one that's on like that bridge and she's kind of like by herself. And just thinking like, wow, what a neat character. She's definitely good.
Opening up
good
the
choice.
quest line to the Brotherhood of Steel, which is really cool. She's very intelligent, but she's dedicated, but she doesn't like necessarily go with the rest of the Brotherhood of Steel values. Like just a very, very complex character. Okay, your pick.
Yeah, so on my team, I need someone that can handle any sort of situations where we're somehow stuck in a mine and we need to blow our way out, or we need to get somewhere, so we're gonna blow our way up to get over there. So I felt like those were all qualities that I probably needed on my team. Tiny Tina in the Borderlands game, she's in Borderlands 2 and some of the subsequent sequels. She is a lesbian character, and she is like out there. So I just feel like her zany personality is funky. She's got that wacky eye that I can relate with too.
So I love Tiny Tina so much. In college, I was a Tiny Tina in the streets. My personality is very Tiny Tina, which still trying to figure out what my voice is like on a podcast, who I want to be and what I want to be and how I want to create myself. But like pretty much as soon as the mic goes off, I am hanging upside down, saying a bunch of gibberish, jumping all over the place. That's just the type of person that I am. So I relate to her a lot. But at the same time,
I can see it.
I don't know how she would fit in a team because she's that like rogue element, like she would get the job done, but in her way. She's almost like a Deadpool, if you will.
Yeah,
so I mean, like I think
see
she was in the middle of my list. Yeah, just everything that you said. Definitely, if you need that demolitions expert, if you need that humor, but I know for that humor, I also got that in Sylvando. So
yeah, definitely. Kind of the opposite ends of the humor spectrum, but like still like funny characters. But yes.
All right, my next character was not someone that I thought I would like until I played this game, and I super live by this game, but is Undyne from
Bro, no
Undertale.
way.
Did I steal
God
that
damn
from
it.
you?
Yes.
Undyne identifies as a lesbian. There is this scene in the game, which if you haven't played Undertale, like that might be one of the top 10 best games ever made. And
good.
even just for like simplicity, unique simplicity, but super deep story and all the feels depending on how you play the game. But you have this scene where you get to go on a date with Undyne, and like, first of all, Undyne kicks ass. There's some very intense scenes where she's chasing you down and like you're just a little kid with a stick or something along like that at that time, and she's shooting arrows or spears at you, and it's kind of terrifying. But like you get to see this really soft side too, which is incredible. You get to see a character that probably never smiles or laughs, smile and laugh, which is great. Also, if you ever do a genocide run in that game, which I won't spoil the details of that, but you get to see a darker side of that character, and she kicks ass. Like and her music is just super intense.
Yeah. The music is really good. I felt like they did a cool thing with Undyne, and whenever because she like pursues you kind of through the entire game in a sense, and like it's just neat when like she's close and like how the game plays off that. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like
a Resident Evil Nemesis moment where it's just kind of like you know some intense shit's going on, but.
Yeah, exactly. But you're not sure, but you kind of know, but you're kind of like, oh shoot, I don't want to do this. But at the same time, you're like, well, like I'm gonna have to deal with it eventually, and it's just neat. All right, cool. So that was literally my next pick. Where do I go next? Yeah, no, thanks. Okay, so for my next choice, I have some scientists and I have some brawlers and fighters and my demolitions expert now because I lost my other picks. But I need someone that can be my personal bodyguard. And I think I would need to pick Poison from Street Fighter and Final Fight. If you don't get the reference, Poison was kind of like the bodyguard to Andor in Final Fight. She was always with him as a character. And then she was also with... oh god, what is his name in Street Fighter? Hugo, I think is his name.
Yes, yeah, Hugo.
So she's with him, and it's the same in universe. They're like the same thing. But yeah, she's a pretty awesome fighter. And I felt like in Final Fight, when you'd see her first, she was one of the first more difficult normal enemies. I did not clarify this. Poison identifies as a trans woman, and I think that she was kind of a trendsetter in the beat 'em up side-scrolling genre. Because I felt like, at least personally, maybe it's from playing Final Fight first. But she was really tough. And then it started this trend in my mind of any women in brawlers like that are really challenging. So we recently played, Patrick and I, Streets of Rage 4. And there's, female enemies in there. And they're like tough. Like the men are kind of pushovers, but the females come with like knives and weapons. And they like really kind of make it challenging. And I felt like that started with Poison.
All of the jump kicks.
Yeah, the jump kicks, exactly. And then I felt like with Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, she was in that one of those. And then she became, you could play as her, and that was pretty cool. Like once she got a little bit more, like you could enter the moves, and then she became her own fighter. That was a neat moment for her.
I think it's really nice too that like we have a character who is trans that like, and this may go against what we talked about a little earlier, but like is sexy, but like I feel like some people, when they think of trans characters, they think of someone who is not doing it well. Again, like I mentioned earlier, but what's his name? Ashford from Resident Evil Code Veronica. Like,
oh yeah.
It's a joke. It's not done well, you know. But like here we see a character where you see that like pretty successful transition. I really liked that. All right, next pick for me. I chose Vivian from Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. Vivian identifies as a lesbian, has some pretty cool abilities. Like she can make Mario completely invulnerable for a turn. Like all attacks just kind of miss him. I think she pulls him. They phase through the ground, which I thought was really cool. Kind of reminiscent of what the Ghost does in the first Paper Mario. And then has some like really cool fire powers too. I just thought it was like a really good contrast to some of my other characters' abilities. I'm noticing my characters, aside from Undyne, are a little heavier on like the ranged attacks, but hey, you can't hit us if you're super far away. So
it's true. Fun fact, I have not played all of that game, but I have a connection with you, Patrick, because there was this random training session at school that they had this contest to win a gift card for Amazon, and I did win the gift card, and one of the games I bought with it, because of course I'm going to spend a gift card on video games, was Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. So I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that happening?
Oh, what was the contest?
It was you went to the training for critical crisis prevention, and then they just put your name in a drawing, and then they just drew my name.
I don't remember.
Anyways, I know that that was one of the games that I got, and I remember you said like, oh, you got to get it, we got to play it, and I definitely did play it. It's just I never
it's
got
long.
through it.
That is a long game for the type of game that it is, and like the Mario RPG-esque games are very dialogue heavy, which is one of the reasons why it's really long, but it's stellar. Definitely. It's a great game.
Moving on to my next pick, I feel like this is the last one on our prerequisite list here that we've discussed before, but we haven't talked about yet. But I got to choose Ellie for my next one.
Next
Last
pick.
of Us. Now you know how it feels. I felt like she is just a survivor, I guess. That's probably the way I would do it, because making the list for who I'd want, I feel like she's the one that's going to conserve rations. She's going to find a way to survive. She's going to think ahead. She's super smart, and I like that a lot. She's a survivor, and she fights to get what she needs. And I think that's a wonderful characteristic for anyone living in a post-apocalyptic world with crazy plant zombies. So we give her that one. What do you feel about her? You could probably speak even more about why she's a good pick.
I played the first one. I haven't played the second one yet. I liked her part of the first game more than I like Joel's, and there's nothing wrong with Joel. Like, it was still great, but I feel like it's the character you would expect in that type of situation where like you didn't expect to play as Ellie in The Last of Us. Like, I didn't expect it, and then you start over with your weapons. She has an actual villain who she fights against in the game, who like builds up in her part of the story. It really makes you feel like, as a younger human being, like, oh crap, it is real, and you get to see how awesome she is through like surviving through that. So yeah, no, she's definitely a good pick.
Glad I got her. And you didn't.
Okay, well, I'm taking Tweak and Craig.
Okay.
Tweak and Craig we took as a combo because I didn't feel right about taking one of them or separating them, because if you've played the Fractured Butthole, you know that like they're a couple. They have this really incredible special move that they do where if they're both in your party and like your special meter is up completely, basically this like hentai drawing of them pops up and it does damage to
Lovely.
to all the enemies on screen, which is actually really disturbing because they're kids, but it doesn't really show anything like terrible. It's just like alluded to it. Also, they're superheroes, so Craig has super strength and he's kind of like your tank and absorbs a lot of hits, and Tweak balances him. You know, he's an elementalist, so he does a lot of like elemental damage. But I just thought that was also a really cool dynamic for a couple too, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to pick them, because you have like that one person who is like the more protective person and strong, and the other person who's just kind of like maybe a little softer, needs the protection, but can do a lot more damage with the ranged moves.
I am getting to the bottom of my list too, so these are the ones that I was like, don't have to get them in any particular order, but they would fit my group. So I am choosing Sander from BioShock, mainly because if I'm thinking of forming a team, and if I was battling any other team, I don't think I would want this psycho on the other side. Yeah, so he's in BioShock. He is a gay character. You find that out in some of the, what do they call them, audio decks that you find. His world that he's in, because Rapture is always kind of weird, but you get to his area. When you're there, he just has these like really weird art pieces and stuff. It's aesthetically a very strange location, which is saying something for BioShock if you haven't played it. He has these like gifts that he gives you that are they're on like plaster statues of people, like offering them in this really sadistic sort of way. And you find out through the game that like they're not plaster statues, they're like real dudes that he's killed and like kind of murdered. Yeah, it's a little disturbing. And it follows the narrative of that game world, so it, in a weird, crazy way, it makes sense. He is a character that you can choose to kill. I think you could even choose to let him go. But it's a really weird place of thinking psychologically about a belief, and that's kind of the whole idea of Bioshock, I suppose. But in that game, it gives you these characters that have Rapture as like a playground to explore their like wild fantasies and what their mind goes to, and this sort of psychotic mentality is well represented in Sander. So that's why I went with him.
So he was my last pick. He's a crazy mofo. I equate him to the Joker. He gave me probably the biggest poopy pants ever when you go into his area and some of the wax figures are alive. And you don't know that until like you turn around at one point and you've noticed they moved and you're just kind of like, oh God, this is all my nightmares coming true.
I just got goosebumps.
That's why he was last on my list. Still has some cool abilities, maybe a little too crazy for my tastes.
Yeah, I don't like want him. It's just I don't want to have to like go against him.
That's fair. That's probably smart. I chose Flea from Chrono Trigger on my team. Flea identifies as gender fluid, which I thought was really cool. That might actually be the first time in my life I ever experienced anything on the LGBT spectrum.
Yeah, old game.
Yeah, because it's a very old game and probably one of the best games of all time. I chose Flea probably because I would need someone who could get the enemy's guard down. They're the status effect person, you know? And I feel like in that battle, your characters get put under charm a lot. That's what I would go for that character. Like, we have a lot of like the range characters. We have a couple, like tanks and beat 'em ups, but we need that one character who's really going to get their defenses down. And that was that character for me.
I have played and beaten Chrono Trigger, so you can't yell at me for that one. But thank God. There's just so much. There's just so much in that game. And I feel like the way that they handle all of the issues that characters deal with really makes it feel like a good journey for each one. I'm not going to lie, I did not use Flea that often, but I think that he was cool. Like, I feel like he felt natural in that game world. Okay, and then I think we're on the last one. I am going to jump on the Dorian train from Dragon Age Inquisition. Not because I have not played Metal Gear Solid 3 and I don't know Major Rykov, but because I thought that Dorian was one of the first characters in the game that was pretty fun. I thought Dorian was just kind of funny, and like I wouldn't say was flamboyant in any way, but like kind of gave off a personality of, homosexuality, which you can pursue in the game. And I just liked it. And I think it was also funny because I think when I played that game the first time, I was also a mage caster. And I thought that he likes other mages. And so I think it felt like I had a connection with him. But it was just fun. And there's no one in that game that I think is really all that bad except the other knight guy. It's not Karth, is it? Is it Karth? What's his name?
Can't remember.
Alistair. Oh, God, Alistair. So I just felt like he was kind of boring. And then Dorian was more fun because he had like character. He wasn't just like a boring nobody. In an RPG, your choices can affect everything: gameplay, story, your enjoyment. And when you have someone that like makes the game kind of fun to like just stop and listen to, it's pretty cool.
So I'm going to fact check the shit out of you. Dragon Age Inquisition came out on the PS4. Dorian and Alistair were not in the same game.
Oh, God.
Alistair's
totally
the
right.
first game and Dorian's the third. And my gaydar broke when I met him. The only thing that you remember is that he really liked the fact that you were a mage. And a dude, but a mage.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Dragon Age Origins. But no, you're right. And I think it was because I admittedly did not beat that game, so I didn't get too super far in it. I don't know. It's just there's so many characters there, and when someone can stand out as one that you remember, apparently not well enough.
To our listeners, I would love it if you would keep a tally of the number of times in all of our episodes that Jason says, "I did not beat that game." Because it's going to be a long
You
tally.
might as well just keep a tally of the times that I said I did beat a game, because then you're going to actually be keeping a small tally.
Very, very small tally.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. I beat Chrono Trigger. I beat Final Fantasy 9.
Okay, there's two. So if you are on that end of the tally, you can have 2 hash marks. All right, to wrap this up, Obviously, I would get Rykov. I'm not big on villains. I do think it's cool that he has electric powers. He's a little crazy. I will say, though, something that really shocked me when you're playing Metal Gear Solid 3, there were little button inputs that you could do to look at different perspectives from Snake's perspective. And if you hit it when you meet Rykov in one scene, I think you're dressed up as a soldier. When you hit the perspective button, Rykov actually grabs Snake's crotch. And it's because the person that you're pretending to be is Rykov's boyfriend or lover.
Got it.
And then he finds out and Snake gets busted. And another funny thing, I'm pretty sure that like Rykov's lover is supposed to be a big rip on Raiden from the second game because a lot of people didn't like him very much for whatever reason.
Yeah, I heard that
so
too.
I feel like they kind of like ripped on him a little bit. That was very like, oh wow, that's like aggressive. It was very like shocking and my brother, we were both just kind of like, Jesus, like, man, really, that's really forward. Not
That's really forward.
that's coming from me. Like, I'm a pretty shocking person, but that was pretty aggressive. So not my cup of tea. I feel like he'd be Operation Human Shield. Like, we would just use him as a meat shield to take all the blows up front. Even whether he did it successfully or not, like he would just be there to be the first one to go.
That's all I'm going to remember him by now is he touches Snake's crotch and he's a meat shield.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, so my final team was Sylvando, Kanji, Juhani, Veronica, Undyne, Vivian, Tweak and Craig, Flea, and Rykov.
I went with Tiny Tina, Dorian, Arcade, Queena, Poison, Ellie, Sandra Cohen, and Zacharias.
Okay, so we can let our listeners decide who won, but I think it's pretty obvious who won this.
I think it's pretty obvious too.
Yeah, it's me, right? I won.
No, it's me.
Oh, no. Okay.
We can both agree that it is quotation me, and let the audience decide.
Do you think you can beat my all-star draft team? Are there any awesome queer characters we missed? Make sure you sound off on our Instagram at RPGaymer.
If you enjoyed listening to us today, you might be interested in tuning in to our next podcast all about emotions and all the feels in video games, coming soon. Be sure to check us out on the Hey RPGaymer YouTube channel, where you can watch all kinds of videos, including past streams and original essay content.
And if you want to see more of Jason's personal content, you can check him out at downstab.com. Gamers, we appreciate you for listening and hope you had a great time. This is Patrick and Jason signing off. Now go out there and get gaming.